Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you're tuning in. Welcome to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased that you are all here with me today. We have a very special show in store for you today, and I'm really looking forward to it. So let's get going. We'll start off, of course, as we always do, or at least always we've been doing for the last year or so, with a little section of my book, Everyday Awakening. And this section is entitled, The Universe Speaks to Us All the Time. We just have to pay attention. Messages come to us from the universe every single day. They come to us in many forms. They show up in different aspects of our life. The important thing is to pay attention to them. These messages may be ones of encouragement that come to us by the right people showing up at the right time, by an unexpected phone call, by a new opportunity showing up. We sometimes think these are just the results of the work we've done, and they are also more than that. Why would things go so smoothly this time compared to the last? Why did business suddenly pick up even though we hadn't done anything differently? Pay attention. Do the circumstances of our life move us in a particular direction? Do they cause us to lean towards or away from a certain situation? Perhaps the universe is trying to tell us something. Perhaps life is speaking to us in the only way it can. The real question is, are we open to listening? Are our eyes open to seeing? If we are not open, we usually don't see. If we are closed off to a possibility because of calling it impossible, we usually don't get it. Nothing is impossible for life. Yes, there are many paths before us, but when we pay attention to the signs around us, we know which one to take. Are you paying attention to what the universe is telling you? So I wrote this section a while ago, and I believe this kind of came from the outgrowth of a conversation I had with a friend. And they were asking me about how I got into running the radio station and the wellness center and all the stuff I was doing. And I was just kind of like, well, I met a guy at a party, this kind of came to me. I just said yes. And they're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I can't believe like all this opportunity came to you. And I thought about it, and I thought, it would have been really easy for me to pass by that opportunity. Lots of things come to us day in and day out. And sometimes we say yes, and sometimes we say no. And sometimes we can't even believe it. We don't think it's real, so we don't even pay attention to it. And so it's just something that I realized about myself and how much it serves me is that I've always had the ability to just say yes to life. Sometimes with some challenging results, but many times things have worked out well. And it's not because I had a pre-planned idea of where I wanted to go, what had to happen, and how this was supposed to work out. It was really just me just being flexible and open and not really 100% sure what to make of something. And I just figure, say yes, see how it goes for a while. If it doesn't work out, you can always say, I changed my mind. No. But so often, if we can just be open, even if several things come to us and none of them work out, and then there's that one. And then there's that one that just is the right thing at the right time in the right place when we're the right person. And then boom, magic happens. And again, this doesn't have to be about business. It could be about relationships. It could be about meeting your future partner. It could be about family. It could be about just experiences. So I guess in this section, it's really about encouraging us all to remember to just be a little bit more open to what life, to what the universe puts in our path. And sometimes it puts something in our path. I don't really believe in the idea of sort of teaching us a lesson, but maybe showing us how far we've come, giving us an opportunity to exercise our boundaries. You know, sometimes someone shows up and we kind of get sucked into their drama and we're like, no, this is not for me. And then it's an opportunity to practice our boundaries and say, your stuff is your stuff. My stuff is my stuff. Let's agree to keep that as separate. And sometimes it's just about, here's some amazing opportunity to hang out with friends or go to some experience. Like a friend told me about this amazing thing when I was in San Diego called Beautifica, which was being shown in their like science center in Balboa Park. And it's like on this dome roof. And it was just an amazing experience. And I'm just so appreciative to my friend for mentioning it to me and that just being open to going. And it was wonderful. So you just never know. And so I'm not saying it could be about a business opportunity or a career move. It could be about hanging out with friends or meeting somebody who becomes your best friend overnight, or about finding a partner, or it could be about just having an amazing opportunity that you couldn't have imagined. When we're open to possibilities, it's so much easier for life to bring amazing things to us. And as long as we're clear that, this is the kind of experience we're looking for. I want to make great connections and have wonderful relationships with amazing people who will enrich and enhance my life. Just having that intention can open you up to such amazing opportunities to connect with people. So that's my section of my book. The section is The Universe Speaks to Us All the Time. We just have to pay attention. And that, of course, is from my book, Everyday Awakening, which you can get at www.everydayawakeningbook.com. And of course, that just takes you to the Amazon listing. But if you're like me and you'd like to support small independent bookstores, we're a major distributor. So any bookstore, you can just ask them to order Everyday Awakening by Sam Leibowitz. Make sure to give them my name. And they can order the book and you can have a copy of it. So. All righty. So I see loyal listener Patty listening to the live stream. Thanks for tuning in. As always, Patty, you are got to be one of my most loyal listeners. I miss William, and Sanaya is also a very loyal listener, though I haven't seen William for a little while, but probably timing is not so good. All right. So now it is my extreme pleasure to welcome to the show Dr. Author, executive producer, and speaker, Sheila Grace Newsom, MD. Dr. Sheila is 72, is a practicing physician in Austin, Texas. She answered a calling, a very unusual calling for gender transition, which began at the age of 63. So not only is gender transition unusual, but to do it at that age is very unusual. Since then, she has written a book, A Calling from the Bones. She's volunteered at a local clinic offering gender-centered care, undergone gender-affirming surgery, and completed the MA at Pacifica University in depth psychology. She created a concierge practice centered around ketamine and focused on PTSD and suicidality. And you guys know ketamine is I think it's the only nationally legal psychedelic substance that therapists can use. Before her transition, she graduated from West Point, where she was the captain of the baseball team, served for 4 years as a paratrooper, and then attained her MD at the University of Texas Medical Branch. She was a partner in 2 large nephrology practices in West Texas until retiring in 2011. She has been an executive producer on 3 films. She's spoken at South by Southwest on Keeping the Soul in Psychedelics in 21, and is now doing consulting work with BRC, a large addiction treatment center in Manor, Texas. Welcome to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Sheila.
Thank you, Sam. I just wanted to reflect back on your reading from this morning, and I think it speaks to so much of my journey, but that synchronicity that you're invoking, how events seem to fall in line, but all of it seems at times to be based upon a calling. And I think that one of the things that I learned most in my training at Pacifica in depth psychology is that the universe works with you as you work with it. Yes. And trying to figure out what that feels like, I think that's the hard part. And the duration of some of our movements, of our pivots, how difficult they can be. And I think that's the other thing, that once you answer a calling, though, it seems that you get into that stream, and from a temporal perspective, it may be something that goes on, you think, for a long time, and yet changes happen magically and at the right time. And sometimes that seems too long, sometimes too short. But all I will say about what you have said is I've been there, I've done that, I've experienced it and continue to experience it. And thank you for reminding me.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. And actually, last week, our episode Connecting with Meaningful Coincidences with Dr. Bernard Beitman, he did a whole study and wrote a book called a couple of books on meaningful coincidences and all about synchronicity and what happens when things just kind of come together and paying attention to them. So for any of my listeners who didn't catch last week's episode, I highly recommend checking it out if this idea of synchronicity and coincidence, if you feel there's a little more behind it. So I highly recommend that. Okay, Dr. Sheila, I would like to get into your background a little bit. We got to take our first break. So when we come back from break, I would like to kind of talk about how did you go from being a paratrooper for 4 years to doing what you're doing today. It's kind of a big transition from being in the military to being a healer, which you basically are, and why. Talk a little bit about sort of the gender transition and why ketamine and psychedelics hold such an appeal for you. Okay?
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every Thursday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on talkradio.nyc. And you can also hear us on KMET in Palm Springs, California, on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And of course, online on talkradio.nyc, on demand, and on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And we will be right back with Dr. Sheila Newsom in just a moment.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're speaking this hour with Dr. Sheila Grace Newsom from Austin, Texas. So, Dr. Sheila, I'm just curious, why did you join the military at a young age?
Sam, I actually went to Texas A&M for a year before, and my mother, out of the wild blue, I was playing baseball and I'd done pretty well my freshman year there. And my mother sent me something early in the year saying, hey, I just saw this in the paper, thought you might be interested. And it was something about the application to go to West Point. I don't know. I read it and I said, I think I'd like to do that. And one thing led to another. I did the testing and was accepted to West Point that must have been April of 1969. So wow. It was actually a prompting from my mother, who had been my guiding force for a long time. And same thing basically happened about going to medical school. So it was really a prompt from somebody that I love dearly and who had my best interest at heart. So one thing led to another. I will say, though, that the moment I walked through the gates at West Point, I felt at home. It was the most beautiful feeling to know that I was at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. And that has stayed with me around my experience at West Point. It's something in the ethos there. It's something that's very deep in my soul. And I'm very reverential about the spirit that is held there.
Yeah, wonderful. I guess there's a certain camaraderie that also develops when you're working, especially in the military. It's about working together as a group, and yes. So you learn to rely on the other people in your class and your troop in a way, and you're training for dealing with life and death situations. So that really creates a very strong bond between you, doesn't it?
It does, and there's a story I want to share in that I actually transitioned a lot in a public way through my involvement at West Point. I was on their development committee for several years, and my wife and I, after retirement, had given some money, and so we were treated very well in going through that experience. But the thing that was most important when I said, and I guess we'll talk about when that calling came, but when I began to transition, there were a group of about 9 classmates of mine who wanted to sit down with me, and we met at West Point. But all of these were in my class, and each of these individuals wanted to hear what had gone on in my life to prompt me to make this radical late in life decision that would change so much about who and what I was. But those classmates took that time to come to West Point to have that conversation.
Wonderful. And are you still close with them? Are you still in communication with them?
You know, the last 2 years has been an awkward, we've seen an awkward transition just in the forces around transgender.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're all feeling that. It's coming up in the crosshairs in the unconscious realm.
Yeah.
And so my 50th West Point reunion is this month, and I decided not to go. Which really breaks my heart, because there's some of those people I would love to be with and to see, but I just don't want to be seen as a center of a distraction or drawing away from the accomplishments of the class and the individuals that are there.
Gotcha. I can understand that. So let's talk about it. You transitioned relatively late in life. When did you first feel the calling? And I'm curious, just like, what was so strong about it that you decided to go through with it? Because I've heard it said that nobody voluntarily chooses to be transgender because it's so difficult and so challenging. And I've known people who've gone through it, and you get beat upon by society, you know, verbally, mentally, emotionally, in so many ways that it's such a difficult thing.
Sam, it was a call. I mean, I was sitting on the deck of my retirement home in Nevis in the West Indies, and looking out, drinking coffee on an April the 13th of 2013, and I heard a voice. It was as clear as you and I sitting here talking, and it said, "Sheila, you are a woman and always have been. There is work to do." And from that point on, you know, when a calling happens in whatever ways that you want to think about, you know, it's hard to negotiate that. And I spent a good 2 years fighting it, because I knew that my wife and family would be deeply affected. Our relationship would never be the same. It was late in life. I'd led this life of an alpha male physician, loved family, loved my girls, loved my wife, and I was still being called to do this. And so in 2015, I went back to Nevis and had a plan to commit suicide. I thought that it was the only way that I was going to honorably get out of this. And so while I was there, I remember the night before I was going to do it, I had a clear plan, and I heard that voice again standing out under the moon and said, "Well, Sheila, this is about free will, and you do what you want, but there are people that could be helped that will not be helped if you do this." So from that point on in 2015, I knew that it was something that I had to move toward. And so we had our oldest daughter's wedding in Nevis, and that was in May of 2018. And that was the last time they saw me as Gary, as father, as husband. And I underwent facial feminization surgery in Boston in September of 2018. And that was that final line in the sand. And I knew that once I had crossed over to that, things would never be the same, and they weren't. But I did wake up from 13 hours of anesthesia in a dark room, and the voice said, "Sheila, you've done well. Now there's work to do." So at every point, I've had this prompting from something that is not me, that's deeper. And so I've just basically followed those prompts.
Wow. It really it takes a lot of bravery to do that. I'm curious, before that night in 2013, which April 13th happens to be my wedding anniversary, that would have been my 10th wedding anniversary. Had you had any indication, any kind of inkling that something might be brewing there, or was this just totally out of the blue?
Sam, when I had to look back, and I think that's what the years at Pacifica in-depth psychology and being in therapy for many years, I had to look back at each part and parcel of my life. And sure enough, as early as being in kindergarten, and I write about it in my book, A Calling from the Bones, but I remember being one among the girls. And I remember we had a dance recital, and the big thing was that the woman who ran the place put on makeup, and I would hide. 2 years that we did this, I would hide so that I wouldn't have to take off the makeup. So that was my first knowing. But there was, this was well before the times of what even that might mean. So there are points in my life that I can tell you that was there and broke through, but it wasn't clear until that very moment when there was a clarity that said, Sheila, you're a woman, always happy.
Wow. I had a guest on my show a couple of months ago, Bob Russo, who is a wonderful executive coach, and he's now like a spiritual teacher, but he came out as being gay after many years of being married. And the way he did it, his wife was very supportive of him, and he said they're still very good friends, and his family is all very accepting of his new identity and his new partner. How has it been with your family and your wife or ex-wife? I don't know.
No, we're still married, and she's the hero. She's the hero in all of this. And my girl, it was very, very difficult. And I think, Sam, that's the thing that we underestimate from an again, we're talking about the unconscious realm. What images we carry for others, especially those that we love. And so I didn't know what image it was that I carried as father, as husband. The valence, the charge with that, the importance in others' lives and others' souls. I did not understand that. I do now, and I see how impactful that is at a deep level. But the thing is that it's taken us all about 5 years to finally rearrange the chairs and how we relate to each other. My wife and I are probably closer than we ever have been. I can tell you I love her more than I ever have. We live separate lives. We're in separate homes, but we're as supportive with each other as we have been. And I think that's what spiritual love is truly about.
Yeah.
The same with my girls. I'm so proud of each of them, the way that they've worked through this themselves. And my way of thinking, those three women are the heroes that I reflect back to.
And how old are your girls now? 27
and 36. And
wow.
We're going to Nevis for kind of a celebration in July, where the three of us will be together for the first time in Nevis.
Oh, nice. I've heard of Nevis. I've never been there. It's one of the lesser known islands in the Caribbean, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'd like to keep it lesser.
I might want to come visit you there sometime.
Okay, all right.
All right. Okay, it's time for our next break. When we come back, let's start talking about your practice and around helping people with PTSD and suicidality and what got you into ketamine and psychedelics, because that's a whole nother topic that I'd really love to focus on. Okay. Wonderful. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. Dr. Sheila, so when did you start to study depth psychology at Pacifica? Was this before the transition or after the transition?
No, it was after the transition, Sam. I entered there in 2019 and finished my master's in 2021.
Right. Now you're a medical doctor. What was your specialty as a medical doctor?
Nephrology. I was a kidney doctor. I took care of people on dialysis, transplantation. Later in my practice, I did a lot of death and dying work, and that was a large part of what I did.
Wow. And so it's not very common that you see someone from a medical background then go more into a therapeutic background. What was it that made you decide that, like, you wanted to start to help people in a different way?
Well, there's one bifurcation in my history that I've got to account for. And at the age of 42, I went to treatment in Atlanta for drugs and alcohol. And so I spent 6 months there at Talbot Marsh Recovery Center. It was for physicians and nurses that recalcitrant by nature. But so I've been sober now for 30 years, but it was that gift of sobriety that opened my eyes at the age of 42 to most everything. And along the way, then after 42, then those sparkly moments, the right people, right places, right things, right times became so important. And I had guides all along the way. So I knew I had always then, especially around the recovery and spirituality, introduced me to a lot of these other conscious concepts and unconscious concepts. So I began to read everything that I could from the depth perspective from 2000 on, and studied astrology. I learned I'm a competent astrologer. I did death and dying work with the Paya Zen Center in Santa Fe. I did went to Vision Quest. I did a lot of things then that introduced me to these concepts. So it was not anything brand new. But the formal calling, and I really thought that I would stay and do the PhD
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I entered in 2019 expecting to complete a PhD. But I had a dream that was very clear, and that it was time to get out and start using my credentials in order to help others. And so, that's how I got there.
So now you've had challenges with substances in the past. What sort of attracted you to psychedelics, and why do you feel like psychedelics is such a powerful treatment mechanism?
Well, I'll clear that and separate those. Each one of those psychedelics seems to have their own teacher or their own process. And for ketamine, was very specific for me. I did not want to have anything to do with any of that because I was afraid around my sobriety.
Right.
And so I wrestled with that for a long time and just never bothered. The thing that happened, though, is that the suicidality, suicidal ideation showed up again later in life. It was not until 2020 that I really felt that suicidal compulsion that seems to be a major component of suicidality, chronic suicidality. And my therapist / psychiatrist said, Sheila, I think it's time for you to try ketamine. And all I remember about ketamine was that I had been an anesthetic that we used in the ER in my training, especially on pediatrics. He said there's a book called The Ketamine Papers that goes all the way through it. And it's Phil Groff and Wolfson and a bunch of icons in that discuss a lot of the things, Steve Levine's work at NYU, et cetera. So I got a basis in it. But the thing is that I had my own experience with intramuscular ketamine that took suicidality off the table.
Wow.
And saved my life. And so once the dream said, Sheila, it's time for you to get out here and do your own thing, that's the one thing that I was pulled toward, is that I knew it had saved my life, and I knew that there were not many people that were willing to risk their license and their licensure to move into those spaces with something as unknown as a psychedelic medication. And I've lost friends around that I in the recovery community, because they think that it has been laissez-faire from my point. But I can tell you now, having worked in this space for now 2 years, that some of the things that I've been able to help introduce people to have been life-changing in many, many places. So that's how I got into it.
Wonderful. Yeah, my wife just attended Wolfson's training in upstate New York on ketamine, and spent a whole week with doctors and psychiatrists and other therapists. And she said the space that they created, just the container, was so wonderful that in and of itself, in addition to their own experience with ketamine, both Lodgins and IM, was just so profound for her. And she's, now doing ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And she started already working with a couple of her existing clients on it, and has found it to be truly an amazing modality to help people.
And Sam, I think that's my major point around the use of the agent or any of the agencies, is that there is this healing has always been between individuals, whether or not it was shaman, whether or not it was physician. There's there is a connection. Transference, countertransference is what Jung and Freud talked about. But the thing is, there's a container. And that's my point in working with people, is that there is a consciousness of that we can agree may occur in this exchange that is something helpful, sacred. And it's the same thing that AA is. How can you explain how we have helped people to become sober after many years of abuse with a spiritual remedy. That's at the basis, and that's the basis of my work with ketamine, is that there's a consciousness here, and so I'm offering that at that level, and you don't have to believe it. But the thing is that just the willingness to perhaps believe is all that it takes.
Yes. And I forget the gentleman's name who founded AA, but a lot of people don't know that he founded AA after having his own psychedelic experience, I think in the 50s, in the late 50s.
Bill Wilson, and did his own work with LSD. And LSD had been shown to be very helpful with recidivism and alcoholism until it was shut down with everything else in the 60s. Exactly.
So I guess the fact that you're focusing on ketamine now, on PTSD and suicidality, some of that comes from your own experience, right? Your own challenges with suicidality and seeing what a difference the ketamine made for you, that now you're working with people that way. So are you strictly using IM? Do you use the lozenge? Do you do IV?
I do not do IV. I use intramuscular, and I think that there is importance. There's no established protocol for any of this. The IV stuff that was begun with the studies, especially around that in NYU, was at 0.5 milligrams per kilogram, and they reported side effects of disassociation. Well, that's what I'm looking for, because I believe with intramuscular injections at 1 milligram per kilogram, that there is a psychedelic experience that is constellated, in which there is some disassociation between ego and self, the universe, not unassociation, not in consciousness, but just enough of a separation for this to determine that it's not exactly that. It's connected. And so that larger self. But I think that's where the neuroplasticity comes in, that there are new pathways created, and the hallmark is a psychedelic experience. That's what I've found in my work. There are some studies that support that. But the main thing is that the intramuscular at a certain dose provides that. I think that having a platform in which that consciousness is constellated and created is important. So I do 3 separate treatments, and then I offer troche in slightly in larger dose in order for absorption to obtain about the same level. Have people do that for monthly for 4 to 6 months afterwards. So that's my protocol. And fortunately, with BRC Recovery, who I've been involved with, there's now becoming funded a veteran track there for veterans with suicidality and substance use disorder. And we're putting together protocols in order to use what I'm using. Fortunately, we're going to be able to wrap that with Auburn University's research and begin to do formal trials. And that's what we don't have. We don't have the formal trials from the scientific basis in order to say, okay, we've got double-blinded trials here that show that suicidality and substance use disorder and long-term sobriety is positively affected by what we do. So that's where I am. I'm trying to connect all those pieces. Wonderful.
That's amazing, especially working with veterans that they're so needed and so ignored. Okay, it's time for us to take our last break of the show. So when we come back, I'd love to ask you about Keeping the Soul in Psychedelics, the talk you gave at South by Southwest. And I'm just curious about the films that you helped to produce, what those were about. Okay. And then we'll wrap things up. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. And if you missed any part of today's show, don't forget, you can always catch us on all the podcasting platforms, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, everywhere that you can find a podcast. And if you can't find me on your favorite podcasting app, let me know and we'll make sure we'll get there. And we'll be right back with Dr. Sheila Newsom in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be Frank About Health to advocate for all of us.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
So, Dr. Sheila, I'm curious, what was your talk about at South by Southwest in terms of keeping the soul in psychedelics? What did you talk about?
Sam, it was not a presentation. I just had one of these stop-off rooms. I mean, I thought it would be such a big deal. But the thing is, there were a room full of people, and my premise, and this was 2022, my premise is that there's something sacred in this medication that we've got to maintain this vision that it's more than just medicine. There is a sacredness with this that in fact affects something deeper than just our conscious mind. It's the soul. It's that unconscious that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I've heard it said that psychedelics treat maladies of the soul.
Yeah.
And so that it's much more, and my experience has been it's much more than just a mental health healing a modality, that it's really sort of a spiritual development tool.
Yes.
Though the first step in really developing spiritually is undoing the trauma that we've experienced through life. Yes. And I know you've done a lot of work on the suicidality and PTSD. How many people have you worked with over the years that you've had such wonderful results with?
Well, the numbers are not, I think, reflective. I think I'm up to the 60 range.
Okay.
Yeah. So 200 times I've been in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to be honest with you, I've had something untoward happen in that, and that was in reflection back. It was a underhydration For a nephrologist to have been in that space. The thing is that remember that ketamine was developed in Vietnam to get wounded soldiers in shock from the battlefield back to the MASH unit. And so no respiratory or cardiac suppression. And so it's a safe medication to work with. As long as you do the preparation and help form that container in a specific way, then it's a safe medication. Yeah. And the worst thing that happens is that there's just, if there's anything untoward, you can walk people through 45 minutes of reassurance. And that's basically what has happened in that one time. But the other 200 times have been people awake and say, I don't know, something shifted there, or I heard something, or a voice was. There's an infinity of landscapes there in that psychic terrain. But I think the main thing that I've been able to do is to help people feel reassuring going into the space, then helping them understand that there was a consciousness that was, and I always say, this is a loving presence that is here in this consciousness. And I called it Netus, the goddess of wisdom. That consciousness, that love and wisdom, and that deep feminine, sacred feminine, is what I think underlies that. That's my own thing, but I offer that as a way to frame the experience, and I think that has a lot to do with the positive effects that we've had.
And I know you're looking to work with veterans more. Have you worked with veterans yet?
You know, I've had a few people that are veterans. The veteran track that is being constellated at BRC is just is a genesis at this point. Right, so right. We will be doing that. The Department of Defense finally has said, yeah, we understand that mental health, especially around suicidality and substance use disorder, is a big problem in the veteran population. So there's payment for that. And then with the researchers at Auburn, also Department of Defense funding those specific studies.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm curious, it said in your bio that you've been executive producer on 3 films. What kinds of films were they?
Well, we got to go and walk the carpet at the Directors Guild in Hollywood, but it was a film by Russell Bush, who is now Rose Bush, called Vultures of Tibet. And it was an odd constellation of synchronicities, but I went to Tibet and did a Kora around Mount Kailash after retirement. Came back and I was involved with the Austin Film Society and ran into somebody at a mixer, and we started chatting. He had just returned from Tibet and filmed this. It's a beautiful 20-minute film on Vimeo that I would encourage people to look. But it involves vultures and the ritual that the Buddhist tradition has in that part of the world is the vultures then consume the bones and the flesh of the dead. And that was a beautiful rendition of that.
Wow.
Let's see. The second was a feature-length film called Iron Orchard that I was involved with a really talented director, Ty Roberts, and then the last one is Lover Beloved, and that's just come out. So anyway, I've been involved with the Austin Film Society for
okay.
So that's how I got involved.
Gotcha. And so I'm curious, you've written A Calling from the Bones. Is there another book in the back of your mind in the works? Or?
Yeah, no, there is, Sam, and it's funny that you prompt that, but I wrote that actually under the name of Sheila Grace, MD, just as I was beginning to really enter transition fully. So I'm now planning on doing a more in-depth work around a lot of the depth issues, pathology, depth issues, dreams, etc., that go along with what I've been through. So I'm hopeful to frame that in a way that people can understand, but also to introduce them to other ways of looking at the world.
Wonderful. Well, you'll let me know when that book's going to come out, and we'll have you back on the show to talk all about it, okay?
Sam, one other thing, I've got to give a shout out to my brother, my cousin, and my maternal aunt, who have been extremely helpful in everything that I've done. And I could not have been here and survived without those three people. So I just want to say thank you and love all to those.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, for coming on the show today. If anybody wants to learn more about you or get in touch with you, would you like to give out your website or any contact info?
Yeah. The best thing is to go to LinkedIn to Sheila Grace Newsom, MAMD, or Finding Metis, FindingMetis.com is my website, and I think that's the best way to get through to me.
All right. Wonderful. Yeah, we'll make sure that we get that in the show notes so people have a way of finding you. Dr. Sheila, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on my show. It's really been a pleasure and honor to get to know you on a deeper level and to hear your story. I thank you for having the courage to share and for the work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Yeah. All right.
And of course, thank you, my loyal listeners, for continuing to tune in and be a part of the show. Without you, there is no show. So please, if you got something out of this interview, if there's something that touched you, please share it with your friends and family. If you know someone maybe who's going through a gender transition, maybe this might serve them in some way. So please share this with those people. So thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you all next week.
Listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.